Yo, call me Sonic Graphics, where I'm feeling kleptopathic. Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome back to the Games Case. Today, and only today, we are finally here to rank the best and worst looking Sonic games. Now, for this video, what we are going to do is we are going to do it for the 3D games. I would like to revisit this concept of the 2D games. The reason why I don't feel great comparing like 2D and 3D games is because like I feel like distinctively it's like a creative like process in terms of how they make the games. Like to me, like looking at a 2D art piece versus a 3D model art piece are very different in how they are created and designed, and so I feel like putting them in some of the same categories would be weird. So I will do a 2D version of this eventually, but for today I thought we would rank these Sonic games based on how they look, you know, and we're just gonna get into it. So of course, subscribe to your boys, support the content. If you'd like to see more, please let me know in the comments section below. Now, Sonic is such an interesting franchise because it has gone through a lot of changes in terms of their graphics. So they've used similar engines for a lot of these, you know, the Hedgehog engine, but this is mainly for physics environments. But you know, a lot of these games look incredibly different based on the platform, the time they came out. And so this is gonna be an interesting discussion to go through, starting with 3D Blast on the Genesis. Now, with the original 3D Blast on the Genesis specifically over the Saturn, I feel like while it is not, you know, typically what you would look at when you look at a Sonic game, I do think there's a charm to it. It does kind of look like a weird isometric arcade game. Like I do think the environments have some like decent colors and the look to it is not bad. I think Sonic himself is unironically probably the ugliest part about 3D Blast, but if you look at the environments, the way they gotta try to translate the 2D levels into these top-down levels is actually like kind of a cool look to it. You know what I mean? Like you look at a stage like I don't know, like Green, the one of the original like Green Coves, right? One of those levels in there, or like the Rusty Ruins. Like the Rusty Ruins has like a fun look to it. Like the walls look really cool. I like the grass textures that they have in some of the levels. You know, if you think of an area like Spring Stadium that's in 3D Blast, like it's got like this weird like almost 80s 90s environment to it. Diamond Dust is like a really pretty ice place. Like I don't know, the sprites and environmental design of the game is actually kind of cool. So for me, this is not gonna be ugly booty in the cheeks. It's more of like a, I would go okay, to be honest with you. It's not my favorite thing to look at, you know, and like I said, Sonic himself doesn't really look my favorite in this game at all. But in terms of like just environments and how it looks, it's not bad really. It's just kind of okay. Now the Saturn version I think is uglier for some reason. I mean, if you guys look at some of this footage for the Saturn version, everything feels kind of like grayer, and I really don't like it. I don't know what they did, so I feel like for me the Saturn one is gonna go in Obviously, you know, it's the same game, so I'm not gonna dock it into ugly because it is still like the same environment, same place, but it's just the worst looking version of the game overall. All right, now next up we have Sonic Adventure. Sonic Adventure, this is a very interesting one to yap about because I love Sonic Adventure, one of my favorite games, probably like, you know, my favorite or second favorite, depending on the day you ask me. But in terms of how the game looks, I don't know how high it would go for me because it goes for a sort of like realistic look, right? Like, you know, you have Station Square, right, which is like your town, and your like real graphical showcase areas come from the main levels, so like a Windy Valley that I think looks really good, or an ice cap zone that looks pretty okay, into Speed Highway. Like there are some cool looking areas like Twinkle Park, but like I wouldn't call the game like a big graphical showcase. And in some ways, like there is something weird to be said about how the environments sort of look realistic, and because it's an old game, everything kind of has this old, you know, low poly look to it. So it is a game that I think looks good. I feel like for me, Sonic Adventure is a good looking game, but it is not like an amazing or great looking game. I still do think they're living with the early, you know, Dreamcast era that I think, you know, the next game actually, you know, taps into a lot better in terms of like Sonic-like environments. But, you know, I might as well get it out the way right the way there is also Sonic Adventure DX. Now, this is the original, I would say. I guess 3D Blast did it first, but like, it's one of the original, you know, remasters of a game that like was very controversial. Now, here's the thing about Sonic Adventure Director's Cut on the GameCube PS2. This is the port of the game, and I have a soft spot for this game because I grew up with it. It was a shock to me when I found out people don't like this version of the game. Now, obviously, we're not talking about the quality of the port in terms of like, you know, gameplay physics changes and stuff like that, but we're talking about how the graphics look, and it kind of goes, you know, the widescreen makes things a little bit weirder. It does have a bit more color. Like, I like Sonic's model, and I like how some of the color is still in the levels, but overall, like, in terms of the graphics, I do still find it fairly similar, besides, you know, some of the character animations that are a little bit more whack. So once again, kind of like the 3D Blast thing, I'm gonna put it like one under it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think it's this blasphemous graphical change that I think, you know, hurts the world, but I do think, you know, in a lot of places, Sonic Adventure still nailed a more sharper look for what they were going for at the time, as opposed to DX, where like even from the box art things are a little bit weird. It's really in the character models where things stand out as weird. I feel like the environments and the levels themselves, for the most part, like remain mainly intact. In some ways, like kind of look a little bit better. Like, I really like the look of Speed Highway in Adventure DX versus original Adventure, but maybe that's just me being like a little goo goo gaga baby. I grew up with this version. All right, let's talk about Sonic Adventure. See, for me, Sonic Adventure does the Sonic Adventure 2 does the Sonic Adventure look better, right? It does this sort of realistic environment look, but adds a lot of Sonicisms to it that make it stand out a lot. You know, like City Escape, I think, while, you know, it's a PNG texture in the background of the sky, I think this level felt very grandiose and great looking, right? You think of a level like even Final Rush, like we're going, you know, late game, a level like that where it's all grind rails and you're in like, you know, the outside looking out of space, like that level is awesome. You know, you have a level like Death Chamber even, right, where I'm not a fan of the level itself, but like the vibe of it, right, with the flames, you know, the flame torches, and you're in this like sort of level with all these like crazy textures, not textures, but like, you know, what would you call it? Like murals on the wall, right? Or you think of a level like Pumpkin Hill, right, where like you're in this like creepy area with all these like scary pumpkin looking structures everywhere, right? You think of even a level like Green Forest, right, where it's just a forest, but there's something about it that looks really, really good. Radical Highway is a nice looking level. Like, I think the look of Sonic Adventure 2, it's not amazing. You know, there are still some levels that look, you know, fairly simple in there, but man, like Sonic Adventure 2 to me, like from even the cutscenes, they've got a unique art style. Now, I do agree that like the character movement is weird, right? Because obviously, you know, it's motion capture in Sonic Adventure, so you'll have like the characters moving around like really weirdly with their arms and stuff, right? And there are some levels that don't stand out great. Like, you know, those levels where you're racing on the highway as Tails or Rouge the Bat, like the entire background is just a PNG of the city, which like it stands out a lot. Like, there is definitely some graphical limitations to Sonic Adventure 2, but I think, like I said, where the good looks of the game really come from are the levels. Like, even a level like Crazy Gadget looks really cool. I always think of like Metal Harbor to me as like such a good looking level. Like, it's like there's this sunshine outside, right? You're going through this like, you know, legitimate like Metal Harbor, right? This little area, you know, how you're running all the way up to the rocket. You have the animation of the rocket going up to the sky. Like, I don't know. To me, Sonic Adventure 2 is like not an incredible looking game, but it's a great looking game that manages to nail that sort of like realistic and cartoony style for the most part. All right, now we've got Sonic Heroes. Now, Sonic Heroes, I have said this many a time, not my favorite game, but I have always said it is artistically one of the best games in the series, right? The areas you go to and the looks of them stand out so much. Like the game right away, like starting from Seaside Hill, you have this beautiful area that sort of takes like, you know, the Green Hillism and puts it like alongside the beach, which is really cool. You've got Grand Metropolis that makes you like, you know, puts you in this environment of like a future city. You have Mystic Mansion that really leans into the look of a haunted mansion area. You know, you've got Rail Canyon that felt very grandiose at the time, you know, with all the rails and the bullet trains coming towards towards, right? Casino Park is like, to me, like a visual wonder, right? Where it's like, from the background to the music to the skyboxes to, all, the ping pong stuff, throwing you around everything. I even love like Frog Forest. Like Frog Forest to me is such like a beautiful vibe to it. You've got these big mushrooms, you've got like a nice skybox. There's something about the environments to me in Sonic Heroes that just look amazing. Now, one thing I don't like about Sonic Heroes is I feel like, the cutscenes are super ugly. Like I hate the CG cutscenes look in that game. They're very weird. The animations are off. Like it's never been my favorite. And even like, the character models, I do know people really like them. But for the most part, there's where my conflict comes from a lot, right? Is I find the like cutscenes themselves not good looking at all, but the environments are like really amazing looking. Like I think of Egg Fleet especially, right? It's such a sick looking level where like, you're in the legit sky with all these battleships flying around. It feels like a war zone. Like I might put this in looks amazing because I feel like for the time, this to me was the peak in terms of like translating 2D, cartoony Sonic looking areas with like, these 3D areas that felt very nice to look at. So I think I'm gonna go looks amazing for this one. All right, next up we have Shadow the Hedgehog. Oof. This game, in terms of how it looks, the way I describe it is gray, right? You go to a lot of gray areas, right? Whether it's the Death Ruins, Cryptic Castle, Black Comet, even areas like Central City, the Gun Fortress, like Lost Impact. Like the game is very like gray, which obviously is the point, right? It's meant to be a quote unquote darker game, but I feel like that makes it lose a bit of the Sonic identity that like you've come to expect in Lois. Now granted, there are some good looking levels, right? Like I think Death Ruins, even though I don't like it, looks cool, right? Or I like the arc, the arc with like the blue and the neon lights in there is kind of cool. Obviously, you have the digital circuit, right? Digital circuit area, which like attempts to be like this whole like, oh, like you're in a computer. Like there's some decent looking places. I think Circus Park also stands out as a location that looks very like, cartoony, and even it's just, there's something about the game that feels very gray. The animations are cute, right? Like I like the squash and stretch they go with, and obviously the CG intro and everything is fantastic. But there is something for me about Shadow that I'm sure you kind of all agree with. Is like there is a very like basic texture gray look to the game that I'm not really a fan of. I feel like I'm gonna go in okay for Shadow the Hedgehog. There's never been an area or a level or a place that's really stood out to me in Shadow the Hedgehog. Every place just kind of feels like here's like a gray, dreary location. All right, next up we have Sonic 06. Ooh, El Clasico. Now, actually, there is a lot of debate about Sonic 06, how it looks graphically. Now, obviously, issues with the game aside, there's been a lot of debate about how people feel about this game, its art style, because it sort of goes for this very realistic look, right? Like how Sonic would look in like a Final Fantasy world or whatever. Obviously the character models are very controversial, where they're a little bit taller, the quills are longer. Some people really like it. I am 50-50 on it. There's times where it looks good, but there's times because of how like the game looks in cutscenes and is unfinished that like things can look really ugly. I do think some of the environments are really pretty. Like I love Kingdom Valley, just this like ruins looking area. That area looks fantastic. Wave Ocean does feel like an evolution of Emerald Coast, right? In terms of how it's designed. I love Crisis City, right? Just this like take on, instead of a regular fire level, what if we made it like a city that was burning, which I think visually is very pleasing. Even an area like Dusty Desert, I think is pretty cool. It still sticks to the basic theme. Even a place like White Acropolis, for obviously as broken and jank as the game can be, like I like this sort of like nighttime snow level that's covered in security, almost feels like a spy mission. Like there's some good to be had in some of the environments and how Sonic 06 looks. Unfortunately, though, it's like, yeah, the game is definitely held back by the fact that, like, weirdly unfinished, you know, like low res textures in there. Again, some of the animations in the cutscenes and how it looks are very janky, right? You know, that's a big issue with the game in general, some of the janky animations. But some of the, like, the environments you go to overall, for me, I think I would put it in, I would put it in okay. I feel like it's a pretty okay looking game when you think of like the locations it goes for, the realistic look it goes for. It just, a lot of it is just not finished or really up to snuff for what you'd expect for Sonic. Next up, we have Sonic in the Secret Rings, bro. I do not like how this game looks, bro. I don't like how Secret Rings looks at all, man. It very much gives Sonic on the Wii, right? It feels lower budget, right? I just don't like how it looks. Now, there are some cool looking areas because of the theming of the game, right? Like, I like the, you know, Dino Jungle as a theming, right? I like the, what's that Death Chamber looking area? It's, the Skeleton Dome, right? The Skeleton Dome, where it's this like dreary, snowy area. You've got Evil Foundry, which is like this inside lair. I feel like the game stands out the most in the Night Palace, right? One of the last environments of the game. But even the levitated ruins are actually kind of cool, right? You know, you have this like sky area where you're like running on these like fake platforms, and they're like, I think while the game is ugly just because of, you know, the limitations of the Wii, and it's a very early Wii Sonic game, I think itself the game is ugly, but some of the environments you go to look cool. Like, I do like Pirate Storm, right? Again, this like stormy night area that's themed after pirates, I think is pretty cool. Like, the locations they go to are cool, but because of like the low resolution, the low textures, the gray skybox in most of them, it just kind of like falls really flat for me more than even an 06. Like, I'm kind of gonna go with for Sonic and the Secret Rings. Oh, next up we've got Sonic Unleashed, and man, bro, I mean, it is unbelievable that they went from 06 and Secret Rings to Sonic Unleashed. I mean, you guys know what I'm about to say about this one. I think this game looks fantastic. I cannot believe this game is almost 20 years old. This game graphically was ahead of its time. You know what I mean? Like, this game was so good looking that like it legitimately could not solidly run on the original hardware it was available on. They had to legitimately, you know, wait till an Xbox upgrade in terms of graphics for all their games for the game to run perfectly on it. But I adore how Sonic Unleashed looks. I mean, I don't think it's a question of how incredible it looks. I think it's a perfect perfection of the Adventure 2 thing, which is like these realistic areas with a cartoony Sonic vibe, right? You think of Rooftop Run, how incredible that area looks. I think of Atabat, right? Especially, you know, daytime. Jungle Joyride, right? I think Jungle Joyride as an area looks beautiful, right? Like, you have these oceans, you have these stone pillars. It's like a mix of ruins with like a beautiful jungle area, right? You even got the places like Shamar. Like, I feel like Shamar does a great job of, you know, fitting that Middle Eastern vibes, where, you know, you start inside this city and then you go outwards into like a more deserty temple-like area, right? Even the snow area in the game stands out so much. You think of Dragon Road, right, where you're literally, you know, running through a dragon road, you know, the Great Wall of China, which is really awesome, and then you're running through the water. It's like, it is such an incredible blend of, especially when you think the game is trying to go to real life locations, they do this unique job of making these real life locations feel like Sonic environments. And obviously, you know, the character models, the animations and cutscenes are incredible. I feel like they stand out the most in the series, and I would even love if we went back to that. So, and that's not even counting the Werehog. Like, the Werehog's animations are super good, even in combat, even in the night levels. Like, even the areas of the game have a sort of look to them, and the night stages that like feels really relaxing and comforting to it. So for me, overall, Unleash is it looks amazing. It's like probably the best of the best, and I'd be shocked if anything else beats it here. Which is hysterical that the same game can also be available on the Wii and PS2 and look ugly, bro. I don't like how these games look on this console, man. This is coming from someone who grew up with this version of the game. I mean, like even going in some of the towns, you can't even walk in the towns like you could originally and see those environments. Like it's straight up like PNG conversations with character. It's just like when you look at them side by side, you are shocked that it is the same video game. It is, for me, it is a dramatically worse art style. I think the Hedgehog looks dramatically worse. I think Sonic looks dramatically worse. Now, there is a sort of charm to it. I guess you could say like, oh, here's this sort of like lower port of the game with different levels. But I just feel like it for me, it's ugly because it is, out of all these games that have had like, you know, different ports, I just feel like this one, in terms of how it looks, it just looks like it's 480p. It just, the environments are super low res. They're not even the same places you go to. Like, again, quality of the game aside, I just think how it looks to me is just, it's ugly, bro. It's not a good looking game. So next up we have Sonic and the Black Knight. Sonic and the Black Knight, to be honest with you, kind of has the same problem to me that Sonic and the Secret Rings has. It is very much a Wii game, and you can tell by how it looks, but it does have some great looking environments to make up for it. Like I think of Molten Mine, right, where it's this like sunset area where you're literally in this like mining town, which is really cool. I like Misty Lake because, like, you know, it's great for a reason. It's like straight up a foggy, dead lake. You know, the trees are dead. Right, but then you'll get like a level like Shrouded Forest where it's like snowy. You've got some like cherry blossom like environments. You have like some snowy trees. That area looks really good. You know, you've got Camelot Castle, which straight up goes for a, you know, castle theming to it. Then you've got Deep Woods, which kind of just like a dreary look. But I think my problem with the game, how it looks graphically, is it's really gray, right? Everything feels very gray. Again, it has the same problem that Secret Rings has, where like the animations and movements, everything feel much cheaper than usual because it's on the Wii. And especially for a game that comes out like after Unleashed, it feels like a just not a graphical showcase, right? And I do think it is a little better looking than Sonic and the Secret Rings. I think Sonic and the Secret Rings has like a very much earlier Wii look. I'm gonna go with okay for Black Knight. Like I said, I think the environments do stand out a bit, and some of the animations with the sword are really cool. But overall, I think it's gonna go in okay. Next up, we've got Sonic Colors, right? And Sonic Colors Ultimate, which is important. Also, I didn't rank Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. I would say Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, the port of it over the original Sonic Adventure 2, it's gonna be one step under because a lot of the areas and places look a little grayer, which to me makes everything kind of lose a bit of its joy. But for the most part, it's still the same looking game. All right, now back to the point here. Sonic Colors. All right, so original Sonic Colors is interesting because, again, it is a Wii game. You can tell, right? Things are very, you know, lower textures. You know, the models aren't really the greatest. But where Sonic Colors stands out graphically is its environment, right? You know, like Tropical Resort makes you feel like you are in an amusement park, right? Like you think of the Sweet Mountain. That's the level I was thinking of, right? Sweet Mountain has such a distinct look to it where it's like a candy land. The environments are all, you know, gummy themed. You got a giant burger in there. You've got Planet Wisp, which to this day is such a prevalent look that you actually see a lot of games go for this sort of like environment versus industrialized look that you have. You know, you see that a lot in games like Nier, right? Automata, right? But it's like, it's a look of that you always remember. That's something I give a lot of props for Sonic Colors is, well, again, Sonic's model and, you know, a lot of the textures are low because it's a Wii game. The environment in terms of how the game looks make it stand out a lot. Like Asteroid Coaster, when I picture in my mind, I picture this like green, you know, sort of factory styled area that's like, you know, themed after a literal roller coaster. Aquarium Park is this beautiful, like, you know, Shogun like dojo looking area with like mixed with water environments. Like everything really does stand out to me environmentally in Sonic Colors. The only thing to me graphically that doesn't like get up to par is just the graphics themselves, like how things and textures look in the game because it is a Wii game. But again, in terms of, you know, environments, it does look really great and levels really do stand out. So for me, I'm gonna go in looking great for Sonic Colors. Now, Ultimate is a game that a lot of people get very angry about, right? You know, it's a game that if you look at them side by side, yeah. I didn't think about it on my playthrough, but of course, when you watch the footage, it definitely looks not the best, right? It's like everything has like extra bloom to it, right? It's still the same game. You're getting the same environments, you're getting the same areas, but yeah, the bloom does actually like deeply affect how people perceive how the game looks, and the fact that they even like cheaped out and made like the cutscenes like just the original game's cutscenes instead of like remastering them too, is kind of a weird issue. So yeah, I'm gonna go with okay for Sonic Colors. Again, you still go to the same environments, right? So you're still getting the Sonic Colors experience, but like the way they, you know, change the lighting, the skyboxes, the models, it's definitely worse. Ooh, Sonic Generations, my beloved. I love Sonic Generations, how it looks, man. To me, this also kind of like gives me fantastic vibes where like all the levels just are like super pretty. There is these sort of like PS3's 360 era look where like things aren't as crazy and colorful when it comes to gens, but I think gens just looks amazing. You know, seeing how they realize some areas from even Sonic Heroes, or like seeing a Planet Wisp in HD, or seeing Rooftop Run, you know, or seeing Chemical Plant in 3D. Like the way they translated a lot of the levels from, you know, older eras to new ones really is amazing to me. And just like for me, Generations, well, it doesn't have its own visual identity, right? You just kind of see it as the better looking version of a lot of these levels. Those levels always look good in it, but I think that's why I'm not gonna put it in looks amazing, because like the environments and the looks of those levels are very much carried by the original game's locations, right? It's not like the game itself has some standout things. And for the most part, like I said, everything looks great. Some of the animations don't really get to shine too much because the cutscenes are very like stale. It's just kind of like they're yapping in white space. And obviously some people, you know, don't necessarily like how some of the 2D Sonic levels look at it with classic Sonic. But for the most part, I think it is a great looking game, right? I think it does a good job of upping the original look of some of these levels and adapting them to a modern art style. Sonic Lost World is next. All right, so Sonic Lost World very much leans into the Nintendo world and style, where it goes for a more cartoony look. Right, that was the aim with Lost World. It feels like it's like it's trying to be like a galaxy game in terms of how you're bouncing, like, you know, planet to planet, and it goes for this more cartoony, simple art style. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you, I do think Sonic Lost World looks good, right? Graphically, it is a pretty good looking game. The environments are very simple to look at, right? Everything sort of feels like it has solid colors, you know, nothing feels like overly shaded or they're doing too much. It feels like they went for a simple cartoony look. I'm gonna fucking kill this flower, bro. I really am. I'm gonna kill you, dude. Like, I think of an area like, you know, Silent Forest, which to me, like, that's one of the standout levels in the game. Like, you get some cool lighting in there. It's a forest vibe, but again, it's super cartoony, right? You think of even Desert Ruins, which it's a basic desert, but it has this sort of mesh of like cartoon style to it, and that's really like one of the things I really like about the game. Even Tropical Coast as a level, as the beach area, the water looks really good. Like the thing about the game is it is not very Sonic in terms of environment, but like the game looks good. Like it, and I feel like that's sort of like my extent of how I feel about it, right? Is there's no levels or areas of the game where I'm like, oh man, like this sort of such a visual identity. You know, you obviously have Windy Hill that like was the Smash stage, and it's the one you always see in the marketing. And like I said, I can appreciate the cartoon vibe of it. But I think this is gonna be the first game, you know, in the modern era that I feel like doesn't try to excel too much in any graphic style. It just looks good. I think that's like the best place to put it. The 3DS version of Lost World is in my opinion. I feel like because of that to be a 3DS version of the game with 3D environments, they didn't make it a 2D game. I just kind of feel like everything is just uglier. It is a genuinely just like worse looking version of the game overall. So for me, I'm gonna go on the 3DS version. Next up, we have Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric. I don't like how this game looks, man. This game has a very like, again, low budget sort of Nickelodeon licensed game look to it, where the environments are very kind of bland. Now, I know people like to point out that the Sonic characters themselves look decent, which I agree with, right? If we're talking about like, the bar to bar, the character models and the character animations, they're actually pretty solid. I like the flow of the characters' movements, but the environments in general, like as a game, are so generic. Like it looks like a game that could have straight up been on early PS3 / late PS2, right? But instead just kind of looks like a game, which they straight up were not able to finish it. But yeah, for the most part, I don't know. I think I'm very neutral on how this game looks. I don't think environmentally it stands out at all. Everything is just kind of like, yeah, here's like a basic town area. Here's like a basic grass sky place. Here's like a basic looking factory. But the character models aren't awful. I don't know, man. I feel like this has got to be on this. I'm going to put in, I guess. Next up, we've got Sonic Forces. This is an interesting game to talk about when we think of just graphics, because Sonic Forces, for as many problems as the game has, is a pretty good looking game. Obviously, the first one that stands out to people is Sunset Heights, right? Like this town that's sort of like, blowing up, is on fire, and that one looks really cool. You have Arsenal Pyramid that mixes like a, desert level with, factory style, right? You've got Green Hill again, which isn't really an exciting area, but you do have like an area like Metropolis, or not Metropolis, is it Capital City? It's Capital City, where it's like you've got this cool sort of futuristic city that you're running through, right? You've got areas like Network Terminal, Luminous Forest, which is like this dark forest with a casino vibe. Like there are some great looking environments in the game, right? I think of the Egg Gate, right? One of the earliest levels in the game, where like the set piece is that you are like in pitch black space, right? The lighting, though, is reflecting really well on Sonic. You've got some great character models overall, albeit, not doing the craziest animations. But yeah, I do think this level, because it has the Generations problem, but worse, right? Where it's like, here's, for a third time, what's it called? Chemical plant, but now it's snowy, right? Oh, here's, Green Hill Zone, but now it's all like, it's actually uglier, here, like it's Sand Hill Zone, like they like to joke about it, right? Like you've got, a pyramid level, you've got a forest, but it has casino stuff. Isn't that kind of cool? Like it kind of retreads a lot of Sonic territory, in terms of its environment. But again, it's still a pretty solid looking game overall. So I think for me, I would almost put it in that same category as Forces and Lost World, where it's like you look good for the most part. You do have some standout areas that you go to, but it's just not distinct enough, or something that I really look back at fondly, again, besides like one or two stages. So we have Sonic Frontiers. This is actually a controversial one, right? There are some people that love how this game looks. There's some people that don't like. Now, obviously, this game does suffer factually because of the pop-in, right? I think the pop-in is a weird graphical blemish on the game that is actually kind of like frustrating, because like I like, running through the world, but then when you see like these like platforms like popping in front of you, it's kind of a big right? And some of the character animations in the dialogue moments of the game feel very stiff in terms of how they're standing and moving. But I do know that the game was trying to go for this like sort of realistic environment, right? Like Kronos is meant to be this like realistic, like ruins like area. You've got Ares Island, which is a desert like place. But I don't know, like I think Frontiers is so crazy, because like when it's great looking, it looks amazing, right? Like I think of obviously the Titan battles, right? Where like you're supersonic, there's a sense of scale, you're doing these sick attacks in them, right? But they're not necessarily visually insane, right? I feel like that's something we could both agree to. Like I don't think there's anything in Sonic Frontiers where like as a game, in terms of its graphics, you're like, wow, right? You're like, this is a great looking game, right? I think the environments they go to are pretty safe. I like a place like Ronos Island, where it's like, Kronos' extension, where you're going through all these like very flowery fields that you're running through. The structures and environments in the game feel very mysterious, which is what the game was going for. You think of I love Chaos Island visually, right? Where you see this volcano, there's some icy areas in it, there's some lava areas in it. Everything feels very like destroyed and maybe, you know, a little bit sad in some ways, right? But I do think, you know, because you have Rhea, Chronos, even Final Horizon, and Uranus that are all basically extensions of Chronos. So it's not that environmentally, like, I think that's the problem with the game, is it's not that environmentally exciting, right? And in fact, like, it's even less exciting when you go to the cyberspace levels and you're once again seeing Green Hill, you're once again seeing Chemical Plant, you're once again seeing Sky Sanctuary, which aren't really, you know, visual delights. The game itself looks good, right? But nothing itself is insane within it. Like I said, I think the game animations stand out, especially when you're in stuff like the final bosses, you know, the supersonic moments. Of course, those are going to look amazing. But for the most part, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm kind of, you know, leaning to the looking good category. You know, I think I'm just gonna put in the looking good category. Like, I think the game looks good, but to me, Frontiers has, in terms of a art style, right? Like, there isn't a visual area to me that said that. I do like the highway level though, like in cyberspace, like the highway area is really good. But I do wish, like I said, that we went to more environments and there was, you know, obviously better looking animations and everything. But I love the weird juxtaposition of like these ruins, right, with these simple environments. There's something about it that, like, for me specifically, like, is not scary, but like it's kind of like melancholy. Maybe it feels like, you know, temper, like even like when you're on Rhea Island and you have these giant structures while you're in this like calm environment. Like, there's something to that I like. And then we have Shadow Generations, right? Shadow Gens specifically, obviously, for me is fucking awesome, right? I love how this game looks. It's probably like one of the most premium looking Sonic games, right? Obviously, and one of the standout moments of Shadow Generations are when you are in the levels and Black Doom does this thing where he starts messing with the environment, everything is spinning, and you're like, whoa, this like looks really good, right? The cutscenes look super good, like when Shadow gets his wings and he's freaking out, right? You know, some of the battle moments within the boss fights, like when you're versus Mephiles and you get some of those animations. Like, for the most part, the game looks fantastic. Again, I will say though, it does fall in the Sonic Gens category where environmentally, artistically, it is held back a little bit by the fact that, you know, it is using environments from past games. It's not like it has its own visual identity, right? But I do think the white space being a 3D environment that you played through, you know, makes white space stand out a bit more as a place you go to. And even like, you know, the evil destroyed version of Radical Highway in the sort of final levels you go to are really sick. But the boss battles and animations and everything are so fantastic in this game compared to Sonic Gens that I do think Shadow Gens for me, I think would go in looks amazing. Like, I think of Sunset Heights specifically, how like the environmentally it's the same place, but like you feel the warfare stand out a lot more. Like, there's that moment that, you know, Shadow does the flip on the arm, jumps off, right? You have even in the first level where it's Space Colony Arc, where, you know, Shadow's punching it and then it just, the lighting looks so good and everything. Like, to me, there's so many standout animations and the game just looks so good that I can't help but, for me, like, put Shadow Gen specifically and looks amazing. So I want to say for Sonic Dream Team, it's actually a really good looking game. It's a very simple art style that I really like. The character models stand out, obviously because it's a mobile game, you know, the areas you go to are limited, but it's very colorful and it pops out a lot. It has no right looking as good as it does for a mobile game. So I actually am gonna go in the, I might actually, unironically, I might put it looking great because it really does look fucking great. You know what I mean? Like, I actually think it has a distinct art style, the dreamy vibe of it, the music, everything. Obviously, we're not talking about music, but still. And Sonic Rumble, you know, it's all like these chibi models. Everything feels very like small scale. It's like miniature versions of all the levels, the characters. It's like an okay looking. There's not really much to it. Yeah, for the most part, this is my ranking of how the Sonic games look. So really, there isn't really many ugly games. There's a lot of ugly ones, but a lot of them are the ones that were meant to be lesser. But for the most part, I think I kind of hit the nail on the head on a lot of these. Obviously, let me know in the comment section below, what do you think is a game that stands out? Is there a game that I don't like visually that you think looked really good? Let me know in the comment section below what you think, what you want to see in the future in terms of how Sonic games look. And I want to do a 2D version of this because, like I said, I feel like for 2D Sonic games, there's a different environmental discussion I want to talk about when it comes to like 2D versus 3D. So thank y'all for watching. You guys are the best. And of course, I will see you all next time. Peace out.